3 late-night hosts, 1 shared broadcast, 6 Iran claims, 0 survivors. That is the complete architecture of what happened on the night Kimmel, Colbert, and Stewart went live together. Not in the standard format of a multi-host special, not in the coordinated, rehearsed style of an award show crossover, but in the specific format of 3 men who had each been covering the same story from different stages for 8 weeks and had independently arrived at the same conclusion, that the claims required a simultaneous accounting on the record in front of the combined audiences that none of them could reach alone. The combined viewership was 11 million. The claims were sourced, time-stamped, and displayed on a shared graphic that a graphic designer later described as the most densely annotated visual she had produced in 14 years of late-night work. The broadcast lasted 41 minutes. By the time it ended, every major news outlet had pulled specific segments and was running them without commentary, not because the segments required no commentary, but because the sourcing was visible in the graphic and the commentary would have been redundant. Trump posted before the broadcast ended. He was still posting at 3 a.m. The first claim went to Colbert. He presented it in the hard-cut style of a man who has been covering a story long enough to have lost patience with the gentle approach. Trump's March 2nd launch of Operation Epic Fury, announced without congressional authorization, monitored from the Mar-a-Lago bunker, described by Trump in a Tuesday night address as an operation that could last 4 to 5 weeks or longer, and also won't be difficult. Colbert placed those two characterizations beside each other without transition. He said, 4 to 5 weeks or longer, won't be difficult. He said, I want you to tell me which of those two things can be simultaneously true. He said, I'll wait. He waited 4 full seconds. The audience waited with him. Then he said, I also want you to know that when the Pentagon released its press photo of the operation, the map in the background had all the Iranian target locations visible. He said, operational security. That's what that's called. He looked at the camera. He said, they were having World War II in there tonight. The claim had been precision targeting of a defined military objective, conducted with full strategic security. The documentation showed a publicly released photograph with target coordinates visible. Colbert placed the claim and the documentation beside each other and said, one of these things. Kimmel took the second claim. He had been building his Iran material since June 2025, since the first all options are on the table statement, which he had noted could mean, for Trump, Popeyes, Burger King, Domino's, and KFC. He had the full timeline printed, not for visual display, but as reference material, the way a lawyer carries a document he doesn't need to consult because he has read it enough times to have the sequence memorized, but wants the physical record present in case the sequence is challenged. He presented the ceasefire pattern, the April 7th deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, or a whole civilization will die tonight. The ceasefire announced 4 hours before that deadline. The extension 2 weeks later. The extension 2 weeks after that. He said, the president behaves like a conscientious employee. He always gives 2 weeks' notice. The audience laughed. He waited. He said, the claim was that the president does not bluff. He quoted Levitt's exact words from the podium. President Trump has proven before he does not bluff. When he makes a promise, he follows through on it. He said, I have 7 extensions. He said, also, he picked up his printed timeline. He said, CNN reported that on the weekend before the most recent extension, the parties were close to a deal. He said, Trump derailed it. He said, with posts, he held up the timeline. He set it down. He coined the acronym that would run everywhere by morning, TACO. Trump always chickens out. He said it once, cleanly, without elaboration, in the register of a man naming a phenomenon that has been visible for long enough that it now requires a name. The architecture of the claim and the documentation was complete in 90 seconds. The claim, the president does not bluff, he follows through. The documentation, 7 extensions, a derailed near deal, an acronym that required only the first letter of each word of the observable pattern. Stewart took the third claim. He had returned to late night specifically for this broadcast, not as a host, not in his former format, but as a guest voice that both Kimmel and Colbert had agreed was necessary for the specific claim they needed him to address, the constitutional one. Trump's authorization of Operation Epic Fury without congressional approval. Stewart presented the specific provision. He presented the prior administration's adherence to it. He presented Trump's public characterization of the authorization question, his statement that regular presidents do it all the time. Stewart said, "That sentence is correct in the way that 'I'm very healthy, I eat well' is correct when the test results haven't come back yet." He said, "Regular presidents have launched military operations without prior congressional authorization." He said, "They have also, in every documented case, notified Congress within 48 hours under the War Powers Resolution." He said, "The documentation of what happened in the 48 hours after Operation Epic Fury shows a White House that described the congressional notification as ongoing for 11 days. He said, "Ongoing." He said it once in the flat register of a man reading a word that does not mean what the administration needs it to mean. The audience went quiet in the specific way they go quiet when comedy has just become something else. Not more serious in tone, but more exact. The frequency of a room that understands it is now watching the documentation rather than the performance. Colbert took the fourth claim. Kimmel, the fifth. Stewart, returning for the sixth, addressed the Truth Social post, the one that ended "Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump." He did not editorialize. He read it aloud in full, including the misspelling of the president's own name, and then said, "I want to be clear that no part of that sentence was written by me." The walk that the broadcast took, from the first claim to the sixth, from Colbert's target coordinate photograph to Stewart's verbatim reading of the post in which the President of the United States appeared to convert to Islam while threatening to destroy a country's power plants, was the architecture of 8 weeks of Iran coverage assembled in 41 minutes and presented not as comedy, which it also was, but as a documented record of the distance between what had been claimed and what the public record showed. Colbert said, near the close, "I want to be honest with you." He said he was beginning to think the war might not be over before Memorial Day, when his show ends its run. He said, "I've been saving these Iran jokes for months." He said, "John, I'm sending you a box." He said it to Stewart, who was still on the shared feed. Stewart said he would take the box. He said he would take whatever was in it and read every word, and when the time came, he would know exactly what to do with it. Confirmation. That sentence was planned. 3 men on 3 stages, sharing an audience for 41 minutes, had prepared the broadcast with the specific care of people who understood that the documentation required the combined credibility of all 3 voices to be received as what it was. Not partisan commentary, not comedy, not opposition performance, but a fact check, sourced, time-stamped, annotated, presented in the register of men who have been watching the same story from different angles for 8 weeks and have arrived independently and then together at the same 6 conclusions. Trump posted from the residence before the broadcast ended. He called it the worst television in the history of the medium. He called all 3 men radical left puppets. He said his Iran strategy was the greatest foreign policy achievement since the end of World War II. He said it in the same post in which he called the broadcast the worst television in the history of the medium, which meant that the greatest foreign policy achievement since World War II and the worst television in the history of the medium had both occurred on the same Tuesday night, which was either a coincidence or a summary. Colbert's characterization was shorter. He had said it in the broadcast's closing minute before the feed cut. "We don't lose wars, we merely exit them." He said it in the register of a man reading a line he has been waiting to deliver and has now delivered and is setting down. The audience laughed. The broadcast ended. The posts continued until 3 a.m. If this changed how you see power, hit subscribe. If it didn't, watch it again. The details you missed the first time are the ones that matter most. Notifications on. The next one drops soon.